Most 9mm pistols don't disappear because they're bad. They disappear because time catches up to them. Every year, something new shows up. New frame, new cut, new trigger promise. For a while, everyone treats it like the answer. 6 months later, it's already been compared to whatever came next. What really gets talked about is what quietly fell out of rotation along the way. Some pistols people confidently recommended just a few years ago didn't make it this far. Not because of one failure, not because of a recall, they just stopped getting picked. Meanwhile, a few pistols never left. No updates, no defending them online, no urgency to replace them. They just kept showing up through ammo changes, optic trends, and carry trends. That contrast is the part most lists miss. Because dominance doesn't look enticing once you've lived with it long enough. It looks boring, predictable, and quiet. And heading on into 2026, that difference still matters. If you've owned guns long enough, you've already watched this happen, whether you noticed it or not. The Springfield Echelon didn't arrive in a market that gives new guns patience. By the time it showed up, shooters were already tired of promises, revisions, and explanations. New pistols don't get time anymore, they get watched. New guns usually get an early nickname for their problem, a trigger issue, a feeding quirk, something people quietly warn each other about. This one never did, and that's not because people weren't looking. If anything, the Echelon was one of the guns everyone expected to complain about. It didn't launch with nostalgia behind it, and it didn't have a loyal base ready to explain things away. If something was wrong, it would have surfaced fast. Instead, what happened was silence. No repeating failure pattern, no quiet revisions, no fixed later conversations. The gun just settled into rotation and stayed there, which is rare for something this new in a market that moves on fast. That's where the dominance comes from. Going into 2026, the Echelon dominates the part of the market where most new pistols disappear. The early scrutiny window where hype dies and real use decides what stays. Most modern guns don't survive that phase, but this one did. That doesn't make it legendary, that makes it relevant. As the year winds down, the buying mindset has already shifted. People aren't shopping for what's new anymore, they're shopping for what they don't feel forced to replace next year. Lighter, thinner, and faster is still the pitch, but control and durability are creeping back into the conversation. Most people look at this goddamn beast and dismiss it immediately. Too heavy, too metal, too old for where handgun design is supposedly going. The assumption is simple. Something built like this shouldn't survive what comes next. Here's where that logic breaks. If it was truly outdated, something would have replaced it by now. Not borrowed from it, not copied the feel, actually replaced it. That never happened. The CZ75 SP01 already solved problems modern pistols are still trying to engineer around. While newer guns shed weight, this one kept balance. While others chased comfort, it stayed controllable. Weight didn't become a flaw, it became leverage. Physics doesn't give a damn about trends. The next one stayed relevant for a very different reason. I'll be honest, I didn't want to like this one. When I picked it up, it felt like just another Glock-style clone that was supposed to disappear quietly. No hype crowd, no die-hard defenders. If this thing failed, nobody was gonna rush in and save it. I ran it the way people actually run guns they don't trust yet. Different ammo, cold weather, gloves on. Even shoved it into mud just to see if it would embarrass itself. Most pistols with this kind of reputation do. They choke, or at least give you something to complain about. This one didn't. Nobody had to convince me. No excuses, no wait until it breaks in. It just kept running, then kept getting picked up again. That's how this thing is quietly winning space in the market. Not by being loud, by not disappearing. You and I both know most pistols live in the middle and die there, forgotten, replaced, shelved, but this one didn't. As people look toward 2026, this is the kind of gun that doesn't get traded back in, and that's why I love it. There are guns that get replaced because something better shows up, and there are guns that get replaced because people want something better. The HK USP never really fit into either category. In most systems, pistols don't get pampered. They get issued, shot, stored, handed off, and forgotten. Newer designs come in, lighter ones, more modern ones. On paper, they're supposed to take over, and most do, for a while at least, and then they start disappearing quietly, pulled from rotation, moved to the back shelf, phased out without anyone making a speech about it. The USP stays where it is, not because people love it, not because it feels great. It keeps surviving the part that ends most guns: repetition, indifference, and time. When something fails in those environments, it doesn't get excuses, it gets replaced. But this one, well, you guessed it, did not. As decisions tighten toward 2026, fewer people gamble on what's new just to see what happens. Guns that have already survived attrition don't need to prove anything again. They're already past the point most designs never reach. The USP didn't stay relevant by being exciting, it stayed because replacement attempts never stuck. The next one survived for a very different reason. I don't get excited about this gun. I never have. Every time Glock drops another version, people complain. Same grip angle, same trigger feel, same boring slide. When the Gen 5 showed up, half the crowd rolled their eyes and said Glock still didn't really fix anything. They weren't wrong. The sights still aren't great, the trigger still tells on you. If your grip is sloppy, the Glock 19 doesn't hide it. Cold hands, irons only, bad fundamentals. This thing will expose you fast. And yep, there are pistols that feel better right out of the box. Here's the part nobody likes admitting. When you strip the excuses away, this is still the gun everyone gets compared to. Not because it's perfect, because it's predictable. You know exactly what it's going to do, how it's going to shoot, and what mistakes are actually yours. I don't defend it online, I don't hype it up. But I also know that when people stop experimenting and start narrowing their choices, this keeps landing back on the table. As we move closer to 2026, familiarity starts mattering more than novelty, and boring starts carrying weight. The Glock 19 V series doesn't win you over, it just refuses to leave. I'll tell you straight, I was annoyed this thing even ended up here. From the start, it felt wrong. Long trigger, skinny grip, nothing about it said this is gonna last. It felt like a pistol you put up with for a while, gripe about, then replace it the second something better comes along. That's what I expected. So I kept using it with that in mind. Not careful, not hopeful, just waiting for the moment it finally gave me a reason to move on. Most guns that feel like this eventually do something stupid and solve the problem for you, but not this one, and that's what got under my skin. It didn't try to charm me, didn't care that I didn't like the trigger, didn't care that it didn't fit my hand just right. It just kept showing up the same way every time, like my opinion wasn't part of the equation, and that's when I understood it. The Beretta APX A1 Carry doesn't win arguments, it waits them out. And as folks start trimming choices heading toward 2026, guns like this don't get swapped out, they get kept. The next one earns its place in the exact opposite way: loud, confident, and daring you to doubt it. The doubt around this one was never quiet. It was loud, public, and constant. Triggers, origin, too good for the price. All the usual reasons people say a gun shouldn't be trusted before it ever hits the range. And to be fair, that doubt mattered, because when something shows up feeling this confident out of the gate, you expect corners, you expect shortcuts, you expect the shine to wear off fast. What didn't happen is the part people don't talk about enough. The checking stopped. Not over years, Not after abuse, early. People quit hovering over it, quit counting rounds, quit waiting for the moment it was supposed to show its weakness. When shooters stopped watching the gun and started watching the target, that told you everything. That's not survival, that's collapse of skepticism. The Canik TP9SF Elite didn't win people over emotionally. It shut the conversation down by performing cleanly enough that nobody felt the need to keep asking questions. That's why it's still relevant now and why it'll carry on into 2026 just fine. When doubts disappear early, there's nothing left to defend or argue about. And the next one earns trust in a completely different way. It wasn't chosen, it was left. Texas winter has a way of exposing things without announcing it. Cold mornings, warmer afternoons, condensation on the glass, dust everywhere. The kind of stretch where equipment either behaves quietly or starts asking for attention. This one lived in the trunk longer than planned, not because GX4 Carry was trusted, because it wasn't important enough to worry about. Days passed, long drives, in and out of the cab, no cleaning rituals, no constant checking, just sitting there doing nothing, which is usually when problems start surfacing. Every now and then, the thought crossed my mind, I should probably see if that thing still runs. It wasn't confidence, it was expectation management. When it finally came out, there was no optimism attached to it, no prep, no ceremony. It just ran. No hesitation, no behavior changes, nothing to explain. Winter broke, weeks rolled on, and then months. By the time the calendar flipped, nothing had changed. And that's what mattered. Guns with reputations like this usually make themselves known under neglect. The GX4 didn't. It stayed quiet through the kind of use people don't brag about, but everyone understands. The next one didn't earn trust by being ignored, it earned it because someone picked it on purpose. I love M&P guns, especially this one. The Shield Plus has been my everyday EDC, and it didn't get there by being exciting. For a long time, the carry conversation never stopped. Same questions, different guns, thinner, lighter, one more round, one more tweak. Everybody comparing, nobody settling. The search just kept dragging on like there was always one more answer coming. Then the noise dropped, the arguments slowed down, comparisons faded out, people quit treating it like a temporary stump and stopped shopping around it. The Shield Plus didn't win debates online, it ended them in real life. Fewer side grades, fewer returns, fewer almost perfect conversations. It just stayed put, doing its job without asking for attention. Not because it disrupted anything, not because it forced upgrades, it quietly removed the need to keep looking. When a gun does that, it changes how people behave without ever announcing it itself. By the time people started thinking ahead instead of sideways, this wasn't being compared anymore, it was being carried. Day after day, same setup, same confidence. Moving into 2026, that kind of finality matters more than hype ever will. I didn't realize how quiet it got until it didn't. We were already a few magazines in, and he was doing what he really does. Same grip tweaks, same little pauses between shots, same look like he was negotiating with the gun instead of shooting it. Nothing was wrong, but nothing was great either. At some point, he picked the Walther PDP full size up. No comment, no question, just loaded it and stepped back up. First few shots broke, and I could see it before the target came back. His shoulders dropped, pace stayed steady, no grip shake, no hesitation. He didn't change how he stood or how he pressed the trigger. That's what caught my attention. He ran the rest of the magazine without stopping, set it down, and reached for another. Same result, cleaner, calmer, like the gun wasn't asking him to solve anything mid-string. Nobody made a speech, nobody declared a switch. He just stopped adjusting. By the end of the session, the other pistol stayed on the bench. This one stayed in his hands, not because it felt new, but because it felt familiar without being stiff. That's why it's still here heading into 2026. When something fixes the small things people hated living with, the urge to keep searching fades out. There was a time when this was the easy answer. Ask around and people pointed this FN 509 for home defense. Big, capable, ready for anything. Nobody really questioned the choice. And if you're honest, you probably nodded along. Then you actually lived with it. It's heavy, it's wide, it always feels like it brought more than the situation asked for. You didn't forget it's there, you don't move around it casually. After a while, you start wondering whether all that just in case carries a price. Most people step away right there. What changes the equation is context. Late night, a sound you didn't expect. That moment where you're fully awake and already behind the curve. Comfort drops down the list fast. Minimal stops mattering. Elegance stops mattering. Margin moves to the top. The gun starts to make sense again. The FN 509 Tactical isn't built around ease, it's built around headroom. It's about not wishing for more when things are already moving. Looking ahead to 2026, when fewer people feel like gambling on perfect setups, guns like this don't fade out. You don't choose it because it feels good, you choose it because regret would feel worse. Some people want peace of mind, others want room to breathe. You don't notice it at first. Same holster, same spot by the door, same weight on your belt. Days go by without a decision being made. No switching based on clothes, no backup option sitting nearby. You just grab it and move on. And heading toward 2026, that kind of simplicity starts to matter more than people care to admit. Fewer setups, fewer adjustments, less mental juggling. The strange part is that you don't remember choosing to commit. For a long time, carry meant trade-offs. Smaller when comfort mattered, bigger when confidence mattered. Rotating depending on weather, plans, mood. It felt flexible, but it was work. You were always managing something. Then the rotation slowed down. Not because you found perfection, because nothing else felt necessary. The grip stayed familiar, the draw stayed consistent, balance didn't change how you moved. You stopped thinking about what you were giving up. The Sig P365 X-Macro didn't convince you to upgrade, it quietly removed the reason to keep adjusting. When one option keeps covering the same ground without forcing compromises, alternatives start feeling redundant. Once you get used to fewer decisions, the next gun has a harder job than people expect. You keep expecting this one to disappear, not fail, not blow up, just quietly vanish. Replaced by something cleaner, something more refined, something that makes more sense on paper, but it doesn't. You still see it, still in rotation, still getting carried, still showing up where people actually shoot and not just talk. And every time you notice it, the same thought crawls back. This wasn't supposed to last. The assumption was simple. Corners had to be cut somewhere. Short lifespan, temporary solution, something you move on from once you do it right. That move never really happened. People stopped waiting for the upgraded version, stopped explaining why they owned it, stopped treating it like a placeholder. It just stayed in use without apology, without fanfare. That's the part that makes people uncomfortable. The PSA Dagger Compact didn't win anyone over emotionally. It didn't change minds with clever arguments, it just refused to exit the picture. And over time, the prediction that cheap meant temporary quietly fell apart. At this rate, people will still be arguing about it in 2026, not because it's special, but because it never gave them a clean reason to write it off. You don't have to like it, but pretending it's temporary stopped making sense a long time ago. This is the gun I kept reaching for without even thinking about it. Not on good days, not even on bad days, just normal days. Same case, same bench, same feel in the hand. Nothing about it asked for attention, and nothing about it ever slowed me down. I'd shoot it, pack it up, and move on. No grip corrections, no mental notes, no follow-up thoughts on the drive home. It did exactly what my hands expected it to do every single time. Weeks passed like that. Other guns rotated in and out. Some stayed longer, some didn't. This one never felt like it was up for review. I didn't justify keeping it. I didn't talk myself into trusting it. It simply stayed where it was. That kind of consistency changes how you think. Most pistols earn loyalty by being impressive. This one earned it by being dependable without reminders. Nothing dramatic, nothing clever, just a baseline that never shifted. By the time 2026 rolls around, that kind of consistency stops being optional and guns like this start rising quietly. When something works this cleanly for this long, doubt runs out of places to hide. And if this level of confidence only lands at number 2, whatever sits at number 1 had to answer a much harder question. This gun doesn't show up the way others do. No buzz, no hype cycle, no crowd trying to convince you it's special. It comes from a place where guns aren't discussed, they're relied on. Israeli designs don't start with comfort or presence. They start with a simple assumption. Things will go wrong, conditions won't be fair, and excuses won't matter. You feel that immediately. The Masada doesn't try to impress you in the hand. It doesn't flatter your shooting. It doesn't reward bad habits. It feels direct, almost indifferent, like it was built for someone who doesn't have time to debate equipment. And that's why it belongs here. As 2026 gets closer, a lot of shooters stop rotating, stop upgrading, stop chasing feel-good improvements. The question changes. Not what do I like, but what do I trust when liking something isn't the point anymore? This gun answers that question without ceremony. The IWI Masada didn't dominate by being exciting, it dominated by being honest about the world it was built for. And once you accept that mindset, everything else on this list starts to feel special. And that's why this one sits at the top. Time has a way of exposing everything. Bad designs get defended, average ones get upgraded, the good ones just keep showing up. None of the pistols in this video needed to be rescued by a new version or explained by marketing. They stayed relevant the same way they always did, by being there when people stopped experimenting. If you recognized a few of these immediately, that tells me something. And if a couple surprised you, that tells you something. So I'll leave it at this. No rankings, no debate bait. What 9mm have you owned long enough that you never felt the urge to replace it? That answer usually matters more than any list. This is Steve, and I'll see you in the next one.